Avenue Q was actually showing, as I mentioned before, the New World stages, the off-Broadway theatre. That, yeah, it was a smaller production. It was a smaller theatre, but it was really cool. Like, it actually fits so well in that theatre that I can't imagine how it would be done in a full-size Broadway theatre, but I'm sure it's great because it's a very renowned musical. Very, very, very clever. If you don't know anything about Avenue Q, it is think Sesame Street, but rude and, Rent crossed with Sesame Street. That's what you got. It is a mix of humans and Sesame Street style puppets. Like, some of the characters are fully human and some of the characters are, actors with puppets. And it's just such an interesting thing, like, and the way that they act, like the way that the humans puppeteering act, it's so cool. It's a really interesting, it's a really interesting show, and it was very groundbreaking when it was made. It was very like no one had ever seen anything like it before, and it's a straight up comedy. I mean, there's some songs that are a bit feelingsy, but mostly it's a straight up comedy, which is very, very clever. Unlike How to Succeed, like, it is a, dark, kind of subversive, witty, modern comedy, and it's brilliant. And I'd not seen it before, and I didn't know that. I'd known of its existence for a long time, but I had not seen it, and or really followed it. Like, it's not one that I had the soundtrack of, but hadn't seen the show. It was my first real experience with it, and it's such a cool show. Like, I would definitely see it again. Like, and yeah, it's just, I think it's very hard in this day and age to do a Broadway show, like, originally, like, to make an original show. Like, so many people are obviously doing, kind of biopics or stuff like that. Like, and obviously it's always worth having a revival, like, of a show that's brilliant in its own merit and stands up the test of time. But, for brand new shows, there are some real leaps. Like, there are some people, like Spider-Man, like, apparently it's good, but yeah, so to come up with, like, a really legitimately clever new Broadway show, like, there's definitely been, like, a shift in the last 10 years or so of Broadway shows, it's sort of changing in theme a lot, which is really good, and I'm going to talk about some of those at the end, because some of those are shows I really would have wanted to see, but yeah, this is definitely very unique, and a step forward for the creativity of making Broadway shows in a good way, as opposed to Spider-Man, which might be a step in the bad way. Yeah. So, there's that one. The next two are both Stephen Schwartz shows, and Stephen Schwartz is, I'm just going to say this right now, I fucking hate Andrew Lloyd Webber. Like, I just have, like, no time for his shows, or mainly him as a human being, which is why I have no time for his shows, especially fucking Phantom. Like, it's creepy. It's creepy because he's a fucking creep, and but that show is about him and his wife. Like, he is the Phantom, and, like, Sarah Brightman, like, oh, I can't. Like, anyway, regardless, whatever. I weirdly don't mind his religious ones. I like Jesus Christ Superstar, sort of, and I like Joseph. Joseph I probably like the best out of any of them, because I have a different preference for Jesus Christ, for the Jesus story, which is this one, Stephen Schwartz's Godspell. Stephen Schwartz is a different composer to Andrew Lloyd Webber, which is a good thing. He is a Broadway writer as well. Andrew Lloyd Webber, if you don't know, is a very famous Broadway writer. He wrote a lot of shows, most of which I do not really care for, but they are some of the most famous ones, like Phantom, Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph, Cats, a few others, but Evita, I guess Evita's okay. Did he do Evita? I can't remember. Anyway, He's just very renowned, but I am not a huge fan of him. Like, if I had to start naming my favourite musicals of all time, I don't think any of his would make, like, top 20 or 30 maybe. They're just shows that I know. I don't have any real emotional attachment to a single Andrew Lloyd Webber show. Godspell, on the other hand, is fucking amazing. It is, it's a very strange show. Like, I think it's basically about the story of Jesus and him getting his kind of apostles and then, you know, dying and everything. But it's really unusual. It's really hard to describe if you haven't seen it and you don't know it. I've done Godspell. I've been in it, like, at school, and so it's sort of, it's much less cohesive than Jesus Christ Superstar. It's basically sort of the Jesus figure. They have the songs, and then it's nearly all the story. The interspersing dialogue is nearly all like biblical quotes and verses. It's not, you know, it's not really like a plot. It's not plotted. You see stuff happening, but it sounds really weird. It's not actually plotted. It's sort of songs interspersed with various of the parables and stuff like that, and they kind of recite them to the audience, and then there is like a sort of a slight plot towards the end where he dies and all of that. But it's basically all a big joyful mess in a really good way. Like, even if you're not Christian, and I'm not Christian, like, I'm not that Christian, it's I mean, you cannot deny that objectively as a story, the Jesus dying and being betrayed by his friends or whatever, it's all very tragic, like, even if it was just a fictional tale, which it may or may not be. You know, people obviously have a lot of stigma. Oh, I don't want to hear about Jesus, so I'm not religious. Yeah, objectively and historically, if that was just a story, like a factual story, it's horrible. Like, it's and beautiful, whether you actually believe in God or not. And this really shows that. Like, I don't think Godspell is necessarily a show for Jesus lovers. Like, it's just a really good show. It's just so joyful until the end, where it's like so much crying. But yeah, as I've said, it's not very cohesive, but it's not meant to be. It's everyone, kind of the cast members are basically running around. Every time Godspell's staged, it's done differently, and that's the other thing that's interesting about it. It's basically there is a movie version of Godspell which I haven't seen, but I believe in that they're kind of running around New York City as business people, and he kind of it starts with them becoming, you know, his apostles or whatever, and he baptizes them in some way, but it's not in the movie, I believe he wears clown makeup the whole time, and that's what he does. They come to him in, I think, the Bethsaida fountain in Central Park, and he puts makeup on them. In ours, everyone was wearing black or uniforms and normal clothes, and he was wearing a football, like a jersey, a rugby jersey, and everyone's baptism during the opening song was getting their jerseys and putting them on. And during our version of the show, everyone referred to him, like, instead of like Lord or whatever, as Coach. And that's the kind of thing that happens with Godspell. Like, you can theme it any way you want, pretty much. And in this, the baptism was just them going from kind of like business clothes and like walking around on their cell phones and stuff to like crazy, like, fun, you know, outfits, like clowny kind of outfits. So it was somewhat similar to, I guess, the movie and stuff, but and it was like everyone sort of just discovering their individual identities, which was kind of a nice image. Like, they went from the same to all having really unique identities, you know, once they became that. And the song, you know, the musical is basically Jesus going through, you know, various of the famous teachings, and then into, you know, songs. Like, it's a really ensemble show. Like, it's not Jesus singing to everyone. It's every one of the 12 or so, you know, cast members has a song, and it can be done. It's like so flexible. In ours, it was done at Circle in the Square, which is like a theatre in the round. So the stage is in the middle, and it's an auditorium all the way around. And we were actually sitting literally on the floor on cushions, which were the rush seats, like on the day $30 ballot seats were, these cushions right around the edge of the stage, and it was really cool. And this version of the show is really interactive. Like, while the people would come on and off, like up and down the aisles, and they'd talk to people or like kind of get people involved. There were lots of bits where people came up from the crowd, and it was just such a joyful experience. And Hunter Parrish, who you might know from Weeds, he was Jesus, and he was phenomenal. Like, he was just the most beautiful, like ethereal, like thing. Like, he was just like so magical, and you just want to weep. He was incredible. It was one of the best productions I've ever seen of anything. Like, it was so uplifting, and I have their cast soundtrack, and Godspell was obviously a show I already knew very well, and it just, I am not Christian. Like, I am not active. Like, I went to a Catholic school. I am agnostic. I don't particularly believe. And I definitely don't practice as a Christian. But God, this show is good. Like, it's so beautiful, and just, and just dynamic, and really, it sounds really weird to describe it, like, say, oh, it has no plot, they do a Bible scene, and then they do a song, and that's it. But it works. Like, it really does. And the fact that a new director or a new cast can do anything they want with it, it's, as opposed to like some other Broadway musicals where literally it's like a set, like a trademarked set and set of costumes. Like, every time you see the show, it will be the same, no matter where it's done in the world, until the show is like professionally and officially redesigned. Godspell is just this awesome mess of like wonderfulness. Telly Leung, who was in Glee, some of you might know him. He's Wes, one of the like main warblers from the season 2. He's also a Broadway star. He's been in a lot of things. Like, he was in Rent at the Hollywood Bowl. Hollywood Bowl, by the way, in LA, does a production every year. A big production of a Broadway show, like, done for like 3 nights, with a pretty huge, like, all-star cast. Like, Jesse Tyler Ferguson was in this year's version of The Producers, and I think Nick Jonas was in their version of Hairspray, and it's like a big Los Angeles Broadway event thing, and it's pretty cool. I was there when they did The Producers. I didn't go to it because it's so big. I'm like, I wouldn't even be able to see, and like, but Telly was Angel in Rent at the Hollywood Bowl, in the same time that Aaron Tveit was Roger, and I think Skylar Aston was Mark, which would have been interesting and cool. I think Skylar Aston was Mark. Anyway, that would have been a really cool thing to see. But Telly is always really cool in his Broadway shows. So he was in it, and he was one of the cast, and he had a solo song, and he played the piano, and it was all fun, and all of the cast were really good. And the way that Hunter Parrish died at the end was horrible and sad. So there was some crying there. So Godspell is, has been one of my favourite shows for a long time, and I obviously have the attachment of having done the show and known every word of it, but I'm really glad I got to see that in that run. I believe Corbin Bleu from High School Musical replaced replace Hunter Parrish when Hunter Parrish finished his run as Jesus, and that would have been cool as well. I know he's very talented, but I'm really glad I saw Hunter. He was magic. He was absolutely magical. So yeah. The reason I'm putting Wicked next is because it's a Stephen Schwartz show as well, and that's really cool because Godspell and Wicked were at the time, I mean Wicked's still running, Godspell's not, but were while Godspell was running in the same building, like the same, the Sondheim Theatre where Wicked is, it's kind of weird, like it's a newer Broadway theatre, and it's in this weird like kind of it's the kind of the bottom of this skyscraper as opposed to an old theatre, and it's literally, you get into it by an underpass, like rather than a street front, and on that underpass is like one door is the Sondheim and one door is Circle in the Square, so you have the same extended building, and they had Godspell and Wicked there, and that's Stephen Schwartz's two biggest shows playing there next to each other at the same time. Wicked obviously is still running and has been there for a long time, but yeah, I saw Wicked as well. Wicked I have seen 3 times professionally now. I've seen the Australian professional version where it run here, I've seen the London version, and I've seen the Broadway version, and I really love Wicked. Like, I really, really love it. I heard it was a show where it took me a couple of years to get into it. Like, there's some Broadway shows that when a new Broadway show comes out and I'm like, oh my god, that sounds really cool, and you like follow it or you have the soundtrack. Wicked, for a while I was like, and I've read the book, and the book is like messed up, but it's really good. And I wasn't sure about the musical, but then I started to get into it, and I started to get to know the songs. I can't remember why, but a few years ago. And yeah, I really love it now, and it's a musical that it's one of my favourite shows now. I mean, I know everyone loves it, and it's been a really successful thing, but yeah, it's worth it. Like, it's such a brilliant show. Like, it's a brilliant concept. It's always interesting to me when someone sees a book and is like, I could make a musical of this, as opposed to I could make a film of this or something, and what that how that inspiration happens, as opposed to something totally original as a musical like Rent, and I mean, I guess it just takes a certain vision, and I guess with this one it's not too much of a leap, because obviously The Wizard of Oz is a musical, but again, that was books as well, and someone was like, I'm going to make that into a musical. I have a tattoo from Wicked, just saying. I'm not going to show it to you because it's on my boob, but, well, sort of. It's here on my side boob, and it is, you may have seen a picture of it before, but it matches with Megan, and it's a graphic based on a line in For Good, which is pretty much the song that I think of with her, and it's a big cry fest, that song. It's like way sad and beautiful, but yeah, I mean, if you know us, whatever, look up the song. That song was also obviously on Glee a couple of years ago, in that New York Glee episode by Kurt and Rachel, and that was one of the most amazing moments of the show. So well done, but yeah, it was before that not before that I got the tattoo, but before that I loved the song. So when I found out they were doing it, I was like, oh my god. And it was one of the songs that, like, I refused to listen to before it aired, like before I was actually watching them perform it, and I was a mess, and it was all very dramatic. But yeah, Wicked is such a good show. Oh my god. And it's as I said, I've seen it done 3 times professionally, and this is not a really fair thing to say, because some people, like, certain casts, or some people, shows are done in Broadway and the West End, but I did not love the West End version. As I said, it's what I just said about Godspell, about being all free and open. Wicked is like trademarked. If you see Wicked anywhere, they'll be wearing the same costumes. Like, they have the same costume designs for the ensemble, like really intense theatrical costumes, the same set, like the same way that there's no like open creativity. It's like a trademarked production that you take from place to place, but which is fine. Like, I really, and it's beautiful. Like it's such a beautiful show, beautiful image. But here's the thing, and it's unfair because this is a fantasy world, not America. But the show originated in New York. It was originated on Broadway. The version I saw in Australia, they faked American accents, and the version I saw in London, they did not. They just used British accents, which doesn't matter because it's a show spoken in the English language. It's in a fantasy world. They can be English. I guess they just didn't want them to outright be Australian in the version here. But I didn't like the English accents. Maybe it's because the soundtrack has American voices, and so, but like the pronunciation of like certain words in songs, I was like, no, I don't like how this sounds in your voice. Please stop. So I didn't love seeing it in London. So like, and I've said to people, there are shows like, I'm like, oh no, it's okay, see this in the US, see this in London, whatever. So it's not bad, and if that's the only way that you've got to see Wicked, see it, but I did not love it with British accents. So I think it was particularly the girl that played Galinda was really like, but yeah. I don't know, Fiyero is one of those like amazing roles that like I love his songs and I love him, and he's just, you know, I love dandies. People know how I am about dandies. I love dandies. And one of my favourite Broadway actors, Adam Garcia, has played him. He's Australian, although he played it in the West End, I think. And Adam Lambert's done Fiyero. Aaron Tvait's done Fiyero. A lot of people want Darren to do Fiyero. He's too short and he can't project like that. If they changed it so his songs were like he was projecting with a rock voice, then maybe, but yeah. But yeah, it's an awesome show. And yeah, if you, I can't think that anyone is watching this and doesn't know about Wicked. Like, do I need to tell you what it's about? I don't think so. Whatever. It's a prequel to The Wizard of Oz about how yeah, the Wicked Witch of the West became how she was. Yeah, it's like Shoebox in that if you know Wicked, it will be your canon for The Wizard of Oz, and you will never see The Wizard of Oz itself in the same way. But it's so, and that's because of the book. Like, to be honest, like, read the book, read Gregory Maguire's Wicked. It's a lot more complex than the musical, but it's awesome. And yeah, it's just yeah, I mean, it's a show that I cry all the way through, and this version, the New York version, was really beautiful, really awesome. Like, obviously it's there, you know, it's the Broadway cast. Like, I was very, very thrilled to actually get to see it in New York as opposed to the other 2 times that I've seen it, though I have loved it every time I've seen it and cried every time I've seen it. Yeah, it's just, there's a particular bit where it's in Dancing Through Life, the song that introduces Fiyero, and that's a song that has dialogue. It's kind of has the intro, and then it has like dialogue and, you know, them getting ready to go out, and then different interactions, and then they kind of burst from the kind of original scene where they're talking about it back into the same chorus actually in the ballroom, and the way that they come, the way that they light it, the people's costumes, the way they come through in that moment is just, it kills me, like, every single time, or just listening to it, like that re-emergence from like the dialogue-y bits into the Dancing Through Life chorus is just, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, like physically. Like, it's one of the, I don't usually like get very emotional simply based on imagery, like I'm not really like that, but this would just, it, the only thing I can think to compare it to is the bit with the lanterns in Tangled, like not the song, but like the view of all the lanterns, which is like, I just like, you know, and this is comparable to that. Like, it's like, to me, that moment just gets me, like, every single time, and I love, and I really love, What Is This Feeling, which is that kind of interaction song between Glinda and Elphaba, about hating each other, and it's so awesome. Like, it's such, it's one of the only things, I have no desire to be an actor or performer, but it's one of the only things I've ever seen. I'm like, I want to do that number. Even as like one of the students, like, because in Galinda's parts, she ends up like having this like trail of like all of the other students like following her and kind of backing her up as while Elphaba's like sulking, and the choreography of her, it's so cool. Like it's such a brilliantly done show, and I don't think, because it has that structure that you have to comply to, and because it hasn't been released, I don't think as like a production for amateurs yet. Like it usually takes a while for a Broadway show to be released as like, oh yeah, like amateur production, like you're less, you know, professional companies can do it. Like there's a certain process to that. I don't think Wicked has been released, so I think the only productions of Wicked are ones that are done under the professional Wicked banner that have the gear and the same costume design and the same set choreography and everything, and it's really, it is hard to not be impressive. I just didn't love that girl's accent in the London show, and that's all. It's so cool. It's such a good show. And that's one show that I've never seen with like a cast where I was like, oh, I'm seeing it because so-and-so's playing, you know, a certain cast. Like I don't actually know who was in the cast of any of mine. I mean, I can look at my playbill, but I didn't really know the cast of any of mine. But it's just beautiful. It's such a good show, and yeah, one day maybe I'll show you my tattoo. I'll try and find a photo of it, but it's it's a anatomical heart outline with a green like painted handprint, like if someone put their hand in green paint and did this onto the heart, and me and Megan have that. So yeah, that's Wicked. So I've saved this one, Anything Goes, for last of the things I saw on that trip, because it was something from a magical dream of joy and happiness. I think it was the last one. Katrina, you're going to have to tell me if I saw something that I've totally forgotten about, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. I know you guys saw something else that I didn't see on one of the nights I was at How to Succeed. Anything Goes, my God. Okay. First of all, you should know that I am ridiculously obsessed with Cole Porter. I think he's one of the best songwriters ever, and I love old musicals. Like the thing that all of the like Weber stuff from the 90s, like 80s and 90s, I'm like, I like a lot of really modern stuff, like really clever modern stuff from new shows, which I'm gonna get to, or I tend to like older stuff, like the kind of like the Rodgers and Hart, like Sondheim. I like a bit of Sondheim. He's not that old. And I like yeah, Cole Porter, who, I like, Irving Berlin, whatever. Cole Porter he has a place in my heart. And I mean, got a pretty good reason as to why. Like, you can go and watch De Lovely, his biopic, which is kind of a musical in itself because it covers a lot of the songs that he's famous for, and in a kind of weirdly natural way, while kind of showing his life. But I love Cole Porter. I love anyone that I like singing Cole Porter will like send me into like some sort of coma, and I really love a lot of Cole Porter's songs as standalone songs. And I mean, his shows, like, similarly to How to Succeed, like some of his shows were like really, once the songs are actually put into a show, the shows were very much of the era of light entertainment. The rich people went to the theatre and they watched this light entertainment. But there's something more to the shows of that era. How to Succeed rubs me the wrong way. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was that misogynistic 60s kind of thing, and this kind of stuff was a little bit older and a little bit different. But sorry, had to fix the camera there. Anything Goes is just a really awesome show. It's like a kind of silly farce about this young man called Billy and his friendship with this nightclub singer called Reno, who they end up going on this cruise together on an ocean liner from New York to London because Billy is pursuing a debutante that he's in love with, Hope Harcourt, and Reno and her friend Moonface Martin, who's like a gangster, are on board the ship. I think to keep an eye on Billy, or because I think Reno has feelings for Billy in some way. Like they're very good friends, and they're kind of, I guess it's in an era of men and women not relating to each other very well, but they are close friends, and so she really kind of fancies him or cares about him. And the interesting thing about it is that Anything Goes has a really happy ending. Like, everyone ends up with someone good. Like, Billy gets Hope and Reno actually gets Hope's ex-fiance. Like, the couples kind of swap, even though Billy and Reno were not really a couple to start with. But if the show was made now, the couple would be Billy and Reno. Like, it would be, he'd think he was in love with Hope the whole time, but then would end up with Reno, if you know what I mean. And so it's kind of, you watch it, and they're meant to have such a good dynamic that you kind of watch it and you want them to get together, but it does have a really funny and silly and cute ending, and it's just, yeah, it's just one of those sort of feel-good shows. But the reason I wanted to see, I mean, I love Cole Porter, and I was stoked they were showing a Cole Porter show while I was there, and I really wanted to see it anyway. But the big reason I went to see this version is because of Sutton Foster, who, if you don't know who Sutton Foster is, your life is lacking something. She is a Broadway star, and I say star, she is a Broadway galaxy, or she is the Broadway universe, possibly. She is magical. Like, she played Reno, basically. She is an actress who is just, I have never seen anyone like her on stage. She's just so good without it feeling in any way, I don't know, I described this better at the time, but the way that she played the character and the way that she is kind of in general, she's not that traditionally beautiful. I mean, she is very beautiful, but she's kind of, you know how we have people now in sort of fandom culture like Emma Stone and Jennifer Lawrence who are like bizarrely derpy? She's kind of like that. Like, she has this big grin that's almost like too big for her face, and she's very tall, and she's got very long arms, but she still manages to be the most elegant thing I have ever seen. Like, even the way that she played the character, she kind of reminds me a bit of Gina Davis. She looks a bit like Gina Davis. But, yeah, she played this character as very, yeah, just very, not outright brash or anything like that. Like, just very kind of matter of fact, and she wasn't playing like this particularly feminine, like, you know, role. I mean, she's kind of like I guess the vixen to, you know, Hope's ingenue, but she's not like a vixen. It's not like a saucy kind of character. She's a bro. Like, all her friends are men, and not in a sexual way. And, you know, she's just really, you know, cool and strong and creative, and you know, she's kind of a boy's girl, not a girl's girl, but she still looks so beautiful, and the way that she moves is so elegant. Like, you will have seen, if you know anything about Broadway, the Tonys, they performed the title number Anything Goes, which is a massive tap number, and just that, the way that she acted in that was so, that really exemplified like everything about her and her performance to me, because the whole time she was playing this role, she looked so happy. Like the way that she interacted with the rest of the cast, like the way that she smiled, like it's odd. Like she wasn't playing a derpy character or anything like that, and she wasn't, but she just kind of, people who are usually that good, people who are that good generally don't show their feelings in how much they're enjoying themselves. That, I hope that makes sense. Like if you're bloody, you know, I don't know, if you're like Eden Espinosa or whatever, and you are playing Eponine, and you like, you know, or you're playing like Elphaba, and you're like having the time of your life doing this role, because you're playing this role, it doesn't show on your face that you're having the time of your life. And but Sutton, and I don't know if it was the role or if it's just her personality, but you could tell how full of joy she was. Like, and in this Anything Goes number, you can kind of see it in that she kind of, there's a bit where she's tapping and she weaves through the whole cast, like she weaves back and forth through all of the sailors, and just the way that she like smiles and does eye contact with them, and like her interactions with everyone on the stage was so amazing, like so in a way that was almost kind of derpy, to the point, like that was the only thing about it that I was like, you know how like some people, like they are just like so clearly having the time of their life and you can see it in their performance, and she was like that, and that was really awesome. But at the same time, her body and like the what she was actually doing, she did this whole number, it's like an 8-minute tap number, and she like didn't break a sweat, and she was just like magically like moving. Like, I don't know how she exists. I will find the video of at least their performance at the Tonys, because it's like she didn't even have to think, like she's just that good, and it was so, it's just indescribable. You will have seen recently me linking to John Groff doing this number, Anything Goes, at Miscast, which is like my favourite Broadway thing ever. Miscast is a gala that happens every year where Broadway stars get up and do performances from roles they could never be in. So it's usually like a gender swapped thing, or like I think 2 of the girls from Next to Normal did like Hard Knock Life from Annie and like stuff like that, because they're adults and obviously can't do that role, that song. And John Gruff did Anything Goes with the choreography that Sutton does, and he was really good. Like, he barely broke a sweat either. Like, he was pretty amazing, and he had the rest of the Anything Goes ensemble, and it was really cool. But Sutton just, I have never seen anyone perform like her. I've seen people be really good, but there's something about how happy she was, and it wasn't just the character. Like, it was like, it's like she's, stars of her level, I think, on Broadway are probably pretty jaded, but she just seems not. Like, she's just absolutely thrilled while also being completely and utterly like flawless, like not a single move wrong. And we were like 4th row, so we were like nearly like eye level, like, so looking up slightly at the stage, but like nearly eye level with their like feet in that number. And oh my, it's the best, like it's the best thing. Like I can't, like, but yeah, it's just such an amazing show, and it has like 3 Cole Porter songs in it that I really, really love, which is that one, Anything Goes, You're the Top, and I Get a Kick Out of You. Other songs as well, but those 3 are like some of the ones that I really like as individual songs. And Joel Grey, another thing, Joel Grey was playing Moonface Martin. Joel Grey is a hugely famous Broadway star. He's like 70 something now. He originated the role of the MC in Cabaret, and so that was pretty intense to get to see him perform. But yeah, I'm so, like, the show kept running after Sutton left. It got a different girl playing Reno, but I am so glad that I got to see her in it, because it was one of the best things I've ever seen. And she's just amazing. Like, she's some sort of god, I don't even know. So yeah, that was the one. Like, a lot of the shows that I saw on that trip were ones that I just I kind of didn't know till I was there quite what ones I'd get to go and see. Like, I didn't know if I was going to see Wicked for sure, and I didn't know if I was going to see Avenue Q, but Anything Goes, that was the one that I was like, yeah, I'm seeing it. And I think it closed in the April. I was there in the January and it closed in the April, and yeah, it got a bunch of Tonys, and it's amazing, and I have a magnet from it on my fridge.